Hi, this is Dennis Duffy with Loyology, and this is episode 1 of using Microsoft Access on a desktop computer to perform loyalty program data analytics. In this first episode, I'm going to walk through how to import a text file, a CSV file, comma-separated values, into Microsoft Access, and then do some basic manipulation and summarization of the data. First thing I'm going to do is click on the External Data tab in Access, and then I will select Text File in the Import section, and then I will navigate my way to the file I want to upload, and open it. And by default, it's going to import the source data into a new table in the current database. That's what I want. Click OK. Go through the dialog box here. It has recognized that it's a delimited file with commas. I'll click the Next button. And then I'm going to click this box. First row contains field names because I have field names in the top of each of the columns in the comma-separated values file that I'm importing, which was an export from my loyalty system, but I'm importing it to do some manipulation and summarization and analysis in Access. And you can see there are 5 columns that are going to be imported, and I will click Next. And here you can select what data type each field will be. So the critical data types here are text, and then there are 2 different kinds of numeric fields that are relevant. One is an integer and one is a double. Double meaning it has a decimal point. You can see I have this field called check total that's going to be imported that has a decimal point in it. My rule of thumb is if I'm not going to do math on a field, then I won't import it as a number. I'll import it as a string. And if I do the same thing with these date time fields, so this is, you'll see there's a date time field that's going to be imported that has kind of the standard SQL date time layout with a 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit day, and then a 24-hour time reading, 2 digits for the hour, 2 digits for the minutes, 2 digits for the seconds. So by default, it has assumed that this store ID is going to be text, check number is going to be text. You see the value up here, short text. And you may see, based upon the version of Access you're using, you may not see the term short text. It may just be called text. This is kind of a newer thing, and I'm using Access 2016. Check total is a double. The card number, which is the identification number of the member in the loyalty program, that's text, and then the date is text. Click Next. Access always asks if it should add a primary key for the kind of work that we're doing here. It's irrelevant. Click No Primary Key. Click Next, and then click Finish. And it'll take maybe 6 or 8 seconds or so to import this CSV file and make it into an Access table. Okay, everything worked fine. If you had something weird happen, for instance, if you had defined a field as numeric and it had text values in it, you would get some error messages here, but this is clean. Click Close, and here's my table in Access. When you're in Access, you can double click on a table and just see the contents, and it'll also show you how many rows there are. This has 1,340,312 rows. It's basically 1 year of data in this loyalty program export that I'm working with that is a test scenario with a bunch of stores and a bunch of transactions that I'm using for the purpose of these tutorials. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I do a reality check, see if the data smells right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to summarize this 1 year of data by day. So I'm going to have one row in the result of the query I'm going to write that shows the date and how many transactions happened on that date and the total dollar value of the transactions that happened on that date. I'm going to click this Create button up here, Query Design. I only have one, then it asks you what table you want to use or tables. I only have one table that's in this Access database, so by default it selects that. I click Add, close the dialog box, So I'm going to summarize on this date time field. But the date time field includes both a date and a time. The date is the first 10 characters. So I'm going to use the left function in Access, which basically specifies that you want to pick out a certain number of characters from the left end of a string. So I have to enclose the name of the field, the date time field, in brackets, and then put a comma, and then the number 10. So let's break this down a little bit. So you can see it's the left function, and then a left quote, and then the name of the field in brackets, and then a comma, then the number 10, and then you close the parenthesis. And then I'm going to click this totals thing here because it indicates that I'm going to be summarizing on something. So I'm going to be grouping by this 10-digit date. And then I'm going to add this check total, and you can see there are a number of different aggregate functions you can do here. I'm going to count the number of check totals, which is basically going to tell me how many checks happened on that date. And then I'm going to add the check total field again and summarize on it. And so what I'll get when I click this run button up here, that'll run the query. So this is all it takes to write this query. Now I run it, and it might take 5 seconds or so to go through all this data. And you see, here's what I have. I just wanted to make sure that it looked like this was in fact one row for every day. I'm just looking here I'm not looking for anything specific. I'm just looking to see if there's anything weird. And the key thing is I wanted to see that I have a year worth of data. And I have 364 days, and that's not surprising because it's not unusual. You can see that there is no data on 12/25/2014 because that's Christmas, and often restaurants are closed on Christmas. So this all looks good, and I could, if I wanted to, copy this and paste it into an Excel spreadsheet. That's pretty straightforward. You can do a Control-A to select it all, and then a Control-C to copy it, and then you could open up a spreadsheet window, blank spreadsheet, paste special text, voila. So it's just that easy because often what we do is we do a certain level of data manipulation and Access, and then when we get down to the point that we're then dressing up the results of analysis to make them look good, we then often copy summarized data into Excel spreadsheets and do all the cleanup and so forth. So that's the reality check. That looks good. I could save this query if I wanted to. I can do Control-S to save it. It says what's the query name, and I'm going to call that just query 1 for now. I would name it something different if I was actually working on a project, but this is just for demonstration purposes. So the next thing that I want to do, it says I copied a large amount of data on the clipboard. Do I want to save it? No, I don't need that. I'm going to do another summary. I'm going to do, so I click the Create tab, Query Design. I'm going to select this table again, and this time I'm going to summarize by card number. And once again, I'm going to select the check total twice. I'm going to do the totals button up here. I'm going to group by card number. I'm going to count the number of check totals. I'm going to sum the number of check totals. And the idea here is I want to summarize this full year of data so that I've got one row for every member in the program and how many visits that member had and how much that member spent. So I'm going to run this query just to make sure that it looks right. Take maybe 6 or 8 seconds, maybe 10. So there you go. We've got 353,291 rows. That means we have like 1.3 million transactions, but they came from 353,291 members who had at least one visit, and some had many more. You can see just at a glance, here's one member that had one visit in the year and spent $45.83, and you got on this third row somebody who was in 144 times and spent $3,781.10. Now what I want to do is I actually want to turn this into a table so I can have it to do some other things to it. So what I'm going to do is I went back over to the design view for this query, and you can see by default queries are what's called select queries, which means they're just going to show data and do nothing else. I'm going to make this into a make table query just by clicking on this button, and it's going to say, well, what do you want this table that is going to be created as a result of this to be named? I'm going to call it memsum, short for member summary. So short and sweet, and I can save this as query 2. So this is, I'm saving the query after I had specified what name I want the output file to be. And so now I'm going to click run. Once again, this will probably take 8 or 10 seconds to go through and summarize the data and make it into a table, and then I'll be able to go to my next step. Okay, looks like it's done. So here's my table called memsum for member summary. All right. Now, because often what I want to do when I'm first taking a look at a year or 2 years or however long a period of data from a loyalty program that I'm looking at, I just like to do some high-level summary metrics. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to create another query and select the table member summary and put in the card number. These are names that Access created because I did a summarization. It's got the card number, and then it's got the count of check total, and that's basically the sum of how many visits occurred from each member, and then the sum of check total, that's the total spent by each member during the time period for which I created this table. So once again, I'm going to do totals. I'm going to count the number of members. It'll give me a count of how many members were active in the year. I'm going to sum the number of visits, and I'm going to sum the spending, and I'm going to click run. And then I'm going to create a new tab in my spreadsheet just so I have a place to paste this stuff, and paste special text. And I'm going to label this members and this visits and this spending. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of quick formatting and make a taller heading. And I'm going to center horizontally and vertically and wrap text if I have a long name. So I'm going to then do so how many visits per member, and that would be visits divided by the number of members. And I'm going to do spend per visit, which is basically what's the average check, and that would be the spending divided by the number of visits. And then I'm going to have, so I've got how many visits per member, how much spend per visit, and now how much total spend per member, which is basically the combination of the two, how many visits and how much spend. Spend per member would be total spending divided by the number of members. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some formatting. First, the ones that have dollar signs. Currency, don't need decimal places yet. I'll do a little bit of last minute fidgeting, and I will do the same numeric currency formatting for this spend per member by just doing Control-Y to repeat the formatting. And then I will just adjust this one for decimal places because they're relevant, this one where they're relevant. And then I've got to do this one for currency. And then these two are not currency, they're just numbers with commas. They don't need any decimal places. Okay, so what we've done is we've demonstrated how to quickly import a year of data from a CSV file. You know, the format of the individual file will vary based upon your input, but you get the idea. And then do some reality check summarization, then create a member summary. and then create kind of a snapshot here where you're able to say, okay, at a high level, first of all, we had 353,000 and change members active with over 1.3 million visits, $40 million in spending. This should not be currency. This should be a number without currency. So I did that. A little mistake. I don't need that many decimal places of precision. So $40 million in spending. Average member had 3.8 visits and spent $30.42 per visit for a total average spend per member of $115.42. So that's a quick kind of intro into the first step of looking at loyalty program analytic data using Microsoft Access. Thank you.